Greetings, friends, and welcome to my guide on Omega Savage 4. Don't worry, I actually complete these encounters before making guides on them, so I have a full understanding of what to watch out for. Alright, let's get started. This is a two-part fight, ExDeath, then Neo ExDeath. ExDeath has an enrage of around 4 minutes and 45 seconds. I would highly recommend burning pots and going all out for this because until more gear is acquired, you're going to need all the damage you can get. Upon pulling the boss, the first ability he will cast is Dual Cast. XD will then follow it up with Blizzard 3. This is 2 sets of ground AoEs. You can bait these all to one side, or just every man for himself, but either way, just dodge. He will follow this up with another Dual Cast. This time, it will be in the form of a tank buster called Thunder 3. Thunder 3 is a force tank swap spread across 2 hits. It applies a stack of lightning resist down on the initial target. To do this, have the off-tank Voke during the cast and take the second hit. Or, what I would recommend, just use Living Dead, Hollowed Ground, or Holmgang for the first one. This is also an AoE, so make sure no one is around either tank. And finally, the last dual cast will be on Fire 3. This will target all 4 DPS with splash damage and then both tanks and healers shortly after. Make sure to stay spread out and not get clipped by each other's AoE. XDad will then begin to cast White Hole. This ability will petrify anyone who is not full HP, so simply top everyone up. I would also recommend a tank swap here so that the other tank can invuln the next Thunder 3. The boss will then cast Decisive Battle. This will summon tentacles spawning in a clockwise or counterclockwise formation. Stack in front of the last one that spawns. This will knock you back. After the knockback, move in the direction that they spawned in. If you don't, the tentacles will flail and knock you off the platform. Make sure you stack in front of the tentacle and not too close to the center. There is very little wiggle room for this. After you move to the left or right, the face in the middle will do a breath attack inflicting zombie. This should never be an issue if you move as a group. 3 flares will then spawn, targeting a DPS, tank, and healer. To not overlap each other, we have our healers stay, while our tanks move in the direction of the breath after you see it go out, and the DPS to the opposite. Move along the edge and stay there. It is very important the whole group stays near the edge because ExDeath will spawn on a random person, and you will need him at the edge for Vacuum Wave. When the boss respawns, he will cast different versions of Thunder 3, Fire 3, and Blizzard 3. Thunder 3 is a large AoE, Fire 3 forces you to stop moving, and Blizzard 3 forces you to continue moving. The spell he casts is random, so keep your eyes peeled. I would always expect Thunder 3 because the cast is extremely fast and the AoE is huge. Once the random element resolves, ExDeath will cast Vacuum Wave. Get super close and be prepared to get knocked back all the way across the arena. You can cover someone and Tempered Will for this, as well as using Surecast and Gap Closers to minimize this effect. He will then cast White Hole. Handle this the same as before. For this next part, we pull XDad to the middle. This will make upcoming mechanics much easier to deal with. During this part, the boss will summon black holes around the arena. Both tanks and healers will have one tethered to them. We put down markers at the start of the fight to have people run to as a general area they need to kite the black holes in. So for instance, tanks at A and D, healers at B and C, or however your group sees fit. We move clockwise for these black holes. Keep in mind, because of the randomness of these black holes, it may be hard to always move straight clockwise. You may need to get skinny or adjust on the fly. The stationary black holes you can get pretty close to, but the tethered ones will explode and kill you instantly if you get within like 5 yalms. During this time, the boss will cast another Fire 3. This one targets all 4 DPS and then tanks and healers shortly after. We have our DPS spread out around XDeath in the middle while dodging black holes. This part is a little tricky at first, but after a few attempts, it will get easier. After the Fire 3 resolves on DPS, they should collapse in the middle of the boss to give tanks and healers more room. a stack mechanic will go out on a healer and they should collapse to the center of the boss along with the other healer and tanks after their Fire 3 resolves. Once this clown fiesta is done, the boss will cast White Hole again. Handle this the same as before. After this, there will be another dual cast Thunder 3. I recommend using Invuln for this one as well. After the Thunder 3, you should do another tank swap to Invuln the last, or prepare your cooldowns for a swap on the next one. ExDeath will now cast Meteor. This hits pretty hard, so make sure people are shielded and mitigation is applied. Another decisive battle will follow this. Handle this decisive battle the same as before. Stay on the edge and be prepared for the random elemental cast. After the resolution, get close and prepare for Vacuum Wave and White Hole. Just like before, handle both these mechanics the same way. We pull the boss to the middle again. Now this part is very similar to the previous Black Hole phase, except for Fire 3 there will be Blizzard 3, and there will not be a stack, but there will be 3 flares that go out instead. You want to move to the edge and move clockwise just like before. Upon resolution of the flares, ExDeath will cast another White Hole, dual cast Thunder 3, Meteor, and then Enrage. You must get him to 59.9% before the Enrage. I would recommend melee LB2 around the time he casts Meteor to make sure you hit the check. It's important to note that even if the tank gets petrified, there is enough time for it to fall off. You activate a cooldown before he actually hits you with Thunder 3. Invuln this Thunder 3 or have the off tank Voke during the cast and stay away from both tanks. You will transition into Neo ExDeath after a pretty cool cinematic. Okay, now the real fight begins. So the first thing you'll want to do is place markers on the outside edge of the arena, similar to the ExDeath markers. Place them on the blue triangles like so. These will help for upcoming mechanics later in the fight. The first thing Neo will do is an extremely hard-hitting AoE, leaving a very nasty dot on the entire raid called Almagest. This should be heavily mitigated with Spread Adlo, Largesse, Convalescence, Mantra, Mine, Adel, and whatever else your group has access to. Neo will cast a recurring tank buster called Arrow 3. Use a cooldown to mitigate this. It is not an AoE despite its animation. This will be followed by Delta Attack. Neo will simultaneously cast Fire, Blizzard, and Thunder 3. Simply stack up in front and spread out after the first AoE. Thunder 3 will hit the tank. I highly recommend using Invuln with either Living Dead or Holmgang. Then the Fire 2 will go off on the 4 DPS. The second Blizzard will go off. Then the last Fire will hit tanks and healers. As melee DPS, dodge into the boss, then back to the stack point after the Fire 3 resolves. As ranged, simply move back. The off tank should move to the side, then back, but do not get close to melee. Okay, now for Grand Cross. There are 3 different types of Grand Cross: Alpha, Delta, and Omega. Every Grand Cross also resets threat, so it's very important that your raid does everything they can to make sure threat is on the tanks. This is a raid responsibility. Grand Cross also applies a lot of raid-wide debuffs that will initially appear very intimidating, but they really aren't that bad. I'll get to all 3 of them, but for now let's focus on Alpha. Before the cast ends, you'll want to be in the middle of the arena because one of the debuffs it applies is Hysteria, and you don't want to run off the edge. Grand Cross Alpha looks like this. All players are afflicted with Acceleration Bomb, White or Black Wounds, and Hysteria. One tank, healer, and DPS will get Allegan Field, and the players without Field will have Off Balance. Nia will begin to cast Flood of Naught, which comes in 3 different forms: Terminal Anti-Light, White and Black Anti-Light, Inside and Outside Anti-Light. This one is Terminal Anti-Light. The group will form a line. The tank without Allegan Field must be in front and use a cooldown. The tank with Allegan Field must be second and also use a cooldown. The DPS and healers without field will be 3 through 6, and the last 2 DPS or healers with field will be 7 and 8. Once the group takes damage, stop moving until Acceleration Bomb resolves. Then do White-Black Anti-Light by moving your character to the appropriate color. To survive, you must be in the opposite color, so if you have purple, be on blue. If you have blue, be on purple. Upon taking damage from the anti-light, your color debuff will change, so don't assume you will always go on the same side. Because of the aggro reset on Grand Cross, have a tank get hate after the anti-light resolves. Nia will cast Double Attack. This ability is a proximity-based tank buster that must be shared between the 2 tanks. It also applies a knockback. You can split this or use a tank invuln here. If you use a tank invuln, make sure you have another available for the upcoming Delta attacks. Keeping the Thunder 3 on one tank during the Delta is more important than using an invuln on Double Attack. Following the double attack, Nia will cast Emptiness, paired with Inside or Outside Anti-Light. The Emptiness arrow circles will tell you where the AoE's pattern is going to go, so while dodging this, also watch out for the Anti-Light on the inside or outside. You can take a hit by one ground AoE. It drains your resources and gives you a damage down, but taking one hit won't kill you, whereas getting hit by the laser will. After the Emptiness, Nia will cast an Arrow 3, and then Grand Cross Delta. Grand Cross Delta looks like this. One tank will have Beyond Death and Off Balance. The other will have Shriek and Lightning. One healer will have Death Wave and Shriek. The other will have Lightning and Beyond Death. 2 DPS will have Acceleration Bomb and Off Balance. The other 2 will have Beyond Death and Off Balance. Have the healer with the stack go south, and the tank with Shriek go southwest. The other healer with Lightning go northwest. The DPS with Acceleration Bomb go northeast, and the DPS with Beyond Death stack with the healer and tank at south. Look away from the west and south because the Shrieks will be going off, and players in the stack face toward the boss so your character will not get petrified, and you'll be knocked into the boss. After the knockback, the players with Beyond Death will need to get hit by the appropriate laser to die and remove the debuff, while the other players complete the mechanic correctly by either avoiding the anti-light or being on the correct colored side. It's also very important to try and always be close to the lasers when you have to get hit. The reason for this is because if you're not and you have the off balance debuff, you'll be thrown off the platform and potentially wipe the raid if you have Allegan Field. The next ability Nia will cast is another Almagest. This is right after people go to 1 HP to remove the Beyond Death debuff, so expect a massive amount of healer threat here. Use your aggro manipulation to the best of your abilities, because right after the Almagest is an Arrow 3 paired with Earthshakers. These Earthshakers target first and second on aggro. They need to be your tanks. Or you can cover a healer if they have too much threat. They are not proximity based, but deal high line damage, so use a cooldown and be on the side. This is then followed up by a Vacuum Wave. Simply move out of it. Okay, so now we use the markers. The upcoming mechanics will be another Emptiness paired with Light and Darkness. Light and Darkness cast Holy and Flare at the same time. We have our stack point at D, so we all immediately find the D. Then once flares are placed on one tank, one healer, and one DPS, we have our flare tank go to A, healer go to B, and DPS go to C, while all other non-marked people stack at D. The boss will teleport, and once this resolves, you will need to find Neo and dodge the inside or outside anti-light. Neo will now summon Meteors. This part is pretty simple, just DPS the Meteors, they die pretty quick. Neo will teleport, so watch where he goes and be on your correct colored side for this anti-light. After Meteors is Charybdis, followed by a double attack. Charybdis will drop everyone to very low HP. Do not use Troubadour or any other HP altering effects here. It could result in killing you instead of dropping you to low HP. Make sure to top people up, and tanks use cooldowns to split this upcoming double attack. There is another Almagast here, followed by a Vacuum Wave, Arrow 3, Emptiness, and Grand Cross Alpha. Handle all of these the same as before, and remember to get to mid after the Emptiness passes for the Grand Cross Alpha. After your acceleration bomb resolves, get on your correct color. The upcoming ability Neo will cast is Delta Attack, so make sure the tank has threat. Handle this the exact same as before and have the tank use an invuln. After this Delta Attack is another Flood of Naught, inside or outside. Dodge this. Okay, now for Grand Cross Omega and Final Battle. This Grand Cross is very intimidating at first, but it is really just a combination of Alpha and Delta while dodging lasers. So first, get to mid for the Hysteria. There will be a healer soak that we take to where the boss was. The reason for this is because the boss teleports to the opposite side. We handle this stack almost identical to the Delta. 3 people will have lightning spread out away from each other. The stack will get knocked back to the opposite side and resolve your Beyond Death debuff on the first laser. The reason why you want to do this on the first laser is because you want to be healed up for the high raid damage that comes after this, and you want as much time to do that as possible. The boss also is not targetable here, so you can't DPS. After the first teleport, the boss will teleport to the left or right, and then the opposite of that. During these teleports, you must resolve your Beyond debuff on the first laser and dodge the next 2 or be on the correct color. If you don't die on the first, that's fine. You have 2 other chances to do so. Healers need to keep in mind that people will need to receive some healing after the first laser because people will be resolving their debuffs here, and the colored laser does moderate damage. Healers will never get off balance here, so you are free to stand as close to mid as possible during these lasers to top people up. As you are dodging lasers and being on your correct colored side, always run toward the laser, because if you have off balance, you will get knocked off the platform if you're not right up near it. Play safe and plan to run toward every laser you have to take. After dodging the third laser, take the shrieks close to mid and turn your character to face outward so that way no one will get petrified. Once your character is turned, stop moving for your acceleration bomb. And finally, once your acceleration bomb resolves, there will be a terminal anti-light flood of naught. Handle this the exact same as Alpha. Tank without field, go in front and use a cooldown. Tank with field is second and use a cooldown. The other people without field should be behind them. Then the last two should be the healer and DPS with Allegan field. Immediately following the flood of Naught and Allegan field explosion is another Almagest, so be prepared for it. Alright, we're almost there. The fight starts to repeat all of its mechanics again, so besides the soften rage at the very end of the fight, you now have seen everything this encounter has to offer. Handle every mechanic the same way that you already have. I will have a link in the description below to all the diagrams I use in this video, as well as a text link to Neo's full rotation. So let's skip to the end because he repeats basically the entire fight, excluding another Grand Cross Omega. Neo will cast Neverwhere, which triggers the Soften Rage, then a final Charybdis at the end of the fight. Again, do not use Troubadour or any other HP altering effects for this. He will then begin to pound the ground, hitting the raid with small damage in succession with Frenzied Fist, then a much stronger attack called Frenzied Sphere. Neo will gain a stacking damage up buff every few seconds, maxing out at 16. Burn the boss as much as you can while keeping the group healed. Well guys, that's all I got. I hope this guide was helpful and will lead to some sweet first clears. Peace guys.